Hello, everybody. Welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. We are celebrating our 100th episode. And so we thought we'd take the opportunity of just having a look back and kind of see what we've been doing and, maybe think of what we've been doing well and what we haven't been doing well and what we could have been doing. And
look at, if we've reevaluated any of the films that we've seen in retrospect.
That's a good idea. Okay, yes.
I thought that was the point.
No, I think the point is more kind of about us. So we've now done, this is our 100th episode. So A, it's a reason to celebrate, right? But B, it is also a kind of a reason to kind of look back and see kind of, what we've been doing, really.
Okay, well, let's celebrate then.
Okay, hurrah. No, because I think there are a lot of questions, right? First, as to the form, right? Kind of, it is a podcast, so there are obvious things that you cannot do in a podcast that you can do maybe in other forms, which is like to show images, right? And kind of point people to things. There are things that are much easier to do, right? Like it's a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's much easier to convey. It's much better that it's not filmed, so people don't have to look at us.
I'm very keen on keeping it just audio.
I want to try a video experiment, but I am also keen to keep it at audio. But I just wondered, because actually you've been doing all the editing and everything, so kind of, are there things that you've learned and about the doing of the podcast, because you listen to it more than I do.
Probably. Well, I can tell you that I've because it's been like 10 years between leaving university, where I was studying film with you, and then doing the podcast, and I can tell you that, like, kind of relearning to watch films with a more kind of appreciative, sort of critical eye, like looking for things. That's kind of come back to me, and I've started to do that more. I mean, I certainly watch films kind of less casually now, and I'm always kind of, I want to find things to look at. I mean, I take notes half the time on my phone after the movie. Occasionally, I even run out during the movie to make some notes. Which you don't bother.
No,
you're just like, fuck it, I'll wing it.
Yes.
But that's something that I've definitely started doing more, and I think that really pays off. And it's basically, and it means that, like, it's better for the podcast, and it means that I enjoy the movies more as well. It makes me pay more attention. Makes me pay better attention.
Yes. I have issues in the sense that I think. Obviously, we both live in Birmingham, and what we do is we engage with the cinema that's available to us, right? So we often see films at either Cineworld or the Mac or the Electric. This morning we went to Star City. We kind of do make use of what's available. But one of the things that's become very clear to me is how little foreign cinema we cover.
Yeah.
And I have this thing because, periodically I teach in Cuba, and there is like a kind of an international kind of a body of work that people interested in cinema have in common in Cuba and in Spain and in Germany, and that filmmakers have, that is actually not the cinema that we are engaging with, really. So I would like us to expand, our range of viewing a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I'm certainly paying more attention. I mean, 90% of what we see is the Cineworld.
Yes.
Because we have the Cineworld card, and those are the biggest releases generally.
Yes.
And they show a lot of other stuff too, but obviously all the Hollywood things we'll see there. And then when it comes to the Electric or the Mac, basically we'll see a film there if it's not on at Cineworld.
Yes.
And because the Electric we still have issues with as a cinema.
Yes.
Like, it really trades on the oldest working cinema in the UK thing, to the point where you're kind of expected to overlook that it's not actually that great to watch films there, I think.
No, it's not.
And the Mac we really like.
it's the best place to watch films in the city in terms of the quality of the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of it's gorgeous to see the digital prints there.
And the atmosphere, the whole thing of like when you go there, there is a different feeling there. I mean, I remember going there a few years ago to see Enter the Void, Gaspar Noé film, and it was really, really full. And I was like, that's a full-on art movie, right?
Yes.
And it's in a full-on art cinema. Like
Yeah.
you really go there and you're just expected to be completely quiet. Like there's no phones, there's no food even. Like you would just shut up. And then when someone was kind of opening a boiled sweet, the rapper going, it pissed everybody off so much in a way that it wouldn't in Cineworld.
Yes.
And that's what I really like about the Mac. Like you can go there for real sort of cinema porn experience there.
Yes. I mean, I think that's kind of part of the fun, and I think we are going to venture, more into a wider cinephile culture in Birmingham. So, one of the things that we haven't kind of been doing, partly because it has to be fun for us, but I think we do need to seek out more of the film festivals, for example.
Yeah, no, we haven't engaged with those at all. It's also partly the hours that I work, because I work nights, which is not something we've ever brought up on the podcast before. But like the fact that I work nights just makes it so difficult.
Yes, yes. Well, there's only certain things we can do. That's for sure.
But you're right. Like we haven't tried to engage with cinema in Birmingham as a locale enough at all, really.
We have engaged with Mubi, which I think is fantastic. And I would like us, to occasionally cover more of what's being shown on video on demand. Not necessarily Mubi in particular, right? But kind of there is a certain type of film now that really you can only see on video on demand, right? Or on Netflix or.
Well, there are Netflix originals, but these are films that would otherwise just be in cinemas that just.
But they're not in cinemas. So.
No, sure.
So.
But I just don't like Netflix originals. I don't. It's not that I think they're crap. I mean, people really love like Mudbound, and people really love the Beast of No Nation. I'm not saying they're bad films, but I really loathe there's a cynicism behind it. We've got all the data on what people will watch, and this is so we've got so we'll make it specifically. I hate that.
But there's no reason why we can't cover, and you can say that you hate that.
No, sure.
I mean...
I'd just rather see films at a fucking cinema, man.
Well, I do as well, but I think we also have to engage with the kind of, the cinematic culture that is around us, and that's part of it, and I don't think we can ignore it.
I really want to, though.
Well, let's try not to. Now, we've now... well, actually, I was going to say we've covered 99 films, but we haven't really, because, some of them we looked at twice.
Yeah, so we've done 99 podcasts, but we've had second screenings of 3 or 4 of them. We watched...
More than 3 or 4.
Well, we
Blade
watched...
Runner, Phantom Thread, Star Wars.
Blade Runner, Phantom Thread, Star Wars, 3 Billboards. Those are the films that we watched twice. So.
Ah, right, okay.
So that's
and watching it twice is not necessarily a marker that these films are better than some of the other ones we've seen, because actually, in relation to 3 Billboards, for example, kind of...
We both harbour serious reservations about it, but it's really interesting. That's why we want to see it again.
Exactly. So, we had questions that we tried to find an answer to in the second screening.
Yeah.
But doing a second podcast doesn't necessarily mean on its own that we like the film more. It's just, that we had more questions, really.
Well, so we've been asked a couple of questions. Laura, who's one of our most loyal listeners.
Yes, thank you, Laura.
Asked us films that we've seen that we think should get more love, or films that we hated.
Ah.
So we've got the list up, and we'll take a second to look over it.
Yes.
Because God knows we can't really remember off the top of our heads.
Well, my memory's so bad.
That, films that we think should get a little bit more love than they have.
Well, I couldn't possibly love 120 Beats Per Minute more. So, I just think that's such a great film, and if you haven't seen it, go see it.
It was a good podcast as well, I think.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing it.
The same for Blade Runner. I mean, I still think it's completely great.
I hope it comes back to the cinema.
I hope so too.
I'll see it again in the cinema.
There are some that I'm having even trouble remembering.
That is another one of the questions. That was a question that David asked us, I think. What films can we barely remember?
Oh God, there's there's so many of them. I mean, and very recent ones as well. I think the worst film that we've seen is A Wrinkle in Time.
Really? I think it's Happy Time Murders.
Oh, you're right. Okay, Happy Time Murders is the worst. The second worst film of the year is A Wrinkle in Time.
A Wrinkle in Time.
Bye, Oprah. Do not darken our screens again.
I'd also harbour that. I'd also say that I really can't emphasise enough how little I like downsizing.
I have more mixed feelings about downsizing.
Yeah,
So I think it's really conceptually interesting. Maybe one of the ones that, I mean, we loved it, but I also think it can't get enough love is Coco.
Coco, yes. Actually, I watched. Well, I got halfway through, then stopped. But I watched that the other day, and because because it's on Netflix now.
Yes.
And I must have watched Coco 10 times at least. I've got the soundtrack, and it is. Honestly, I think it could have been Best Picture. Frankly, I know we were saying that about Blade Runner, how much we loved in Blade Runner, and Blade Runner is amazing, but Coco is clever and sweet and so brilliantly kind of complex in the way it's built and beautiful and just the most emotional thing. I think it's such a perfect film.
I think so too. And actually it has a whole cinephile dimension that is maybe not as accessible, to people as it should be, because it draws so much on Mexican cinema of what they call the golden era of, the 30s through the 50s. Kind of a melodramatic cinema with, big stars like Maria Felix and so on. And in fact, it it draws on one film specifically, which is called Macario, which is about this peasant, on the Day of the Dead.
Right.
And he's got children which he loves very much, but, they're always wanting things, and he's so poor, and he sits down to eat, and, before he can even touch his food, his children are already grabbing for it, and, he tells his wife that, all he wants is to have one thing for himself. And the wife steals a turkey and cooks it for him, right?
Right.
And he goes to eat his turkey, and he meets death.
Oh dear.
Yes, and so death, he meets death.
Sounds like a Christmas Carol.
It's really great, really.
Yeah.
So I think, God comes to him first and says, "Will you give me some of your turkey?" And he says no, because you're God and you can have anything, right? Like, and so on. Yeah, but then and the devil appears, and he turns down the devil as well. But with death, he says, yes, you can have my turkey, because he figures that at least for the time that death is eating his turkey, he gets to live, right?
That's clever of him.
Yeah, so then the film unfolds in all of this. So, he's given the power to bring people back from the dead, right? And all of the imagery in this film and some of the situations are really drawn on in Coco.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic.
I have to watch it.
Yes, you have.
Actually, I've got to clarify. When I said Coco's on Netflix, it's on American Netflix.
Ah, yes.
That I've been, because I've got a VPN, but it's worth getting a VPN.
Yes.
So if it's on your Netflix, then watch it, or if it's not, then just buy it. It's great.
Yes.
The thing I really love about Coco that I can't get over is how brilliantly elegant such a complex story is told. Everything has kind of two functions, and it moves so fast. This is really intricate, efficient storytelling, because it's doing so much with so little. It's just brilliantly put together, and on top of that, it will always make me cry at the end, because it is the most beautiful, amazing film, Coco.
We've seen quite a lot.
And it's easily Pixar's best film.
Let's go back to what do you think are really kind of, forgettable films that we covered? Like, for example, I wouldn't have minded not seeing Justice League after I've seen it.
No, I think you have to see it to find out that it is so forgettable. 'Cause
Yes.
otherwise, if you don't see it, you're like, oh, maybe it was good.
That's true.
I wouldn't have mind missing the snowman. Yeah,
I can't even remember anything about it.
The snowman was the Michael Fassbender and Rebecca Ferguson in Sweden.
Oh yes,
Scandinoir.
Yes, it had some good visual things, if I remember correctly. Actually,
Yeah, it did, but that was about it, and it had all these production problems that we didn't know about at the time.
Yes,
that explain like why it is so shocking, why the story makes no sense.
There were some films that were kind of very worthy, but really kind of forgettable. I'm thinking of Molly's Game, for example.
Oh yeah.
You know, which
was fine.
It was like a TV movie, though.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was kind of a bit forgettable. But all in all, I mean, I think it's been quite a good year, really.
Yeah.
So I also think we should have a little talk about kind of Spielberg, right? Because, you know, I think The Post to me is like so forgettable.
Really?
Yes, it
I
is.
like it an awful lot.
Do you?
Yeah. I can see why you would think it's forgettable. It's got a kind of... It has a reasonably bland kind of style to it, you know. I think it's fitting the aesthetic, but it is bland. And I can see why you'd also think it's sort of overly worthy. But I think the two leads... In fact, everyone's well cast, but the two leads, Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, are really, really good. And it's one of these where once you get into a scene, I can't stop watching the scene.
Well, for me, it's a problem, you know, that the visual image that most stays with me about that film is the poster.
What's the poster of?
Well, you know, the poster was in the stairs of, you know, Congress or whatever. It had lots of faces.
Right.
And Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks stood out.
I don't remember. I don't think I've seen that.
Okay. Well.
Really?
Yeah, and I have a whole thing about him, because I also know that you love Bridge of Spies.
Yeah, brilliantly told story.
Yeah, which I also kind of... I think...
There are politics in it, which...
The politics of it are, like, terrible. And I just... You know, those two films made me think, you know, Spielberg's just become a craftsman. Like, nobody can tell a story better, in a way. But, you know... What stories does he tell? Yeah, like, and also, what understanding does he have of the world and of people in the world, you know, to help him kind of construct the storytelling? And I think, you know, the technique is beyond compare in a way, but everything else to me is really quite questionable.
Maybe.
I mean, it's a cliche, I suppose, now to say about him, but I do feel that.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, but I will always, his films are always gonna interest me and entertain me, and I think for me he's like Woody Allen is for you, where it's like maligned by most, but I see the guy, and also, you know what I mean, like, yes, I'm always going to stick with him, and because I can totally see why you like that with Woody Allen as well, even if I don't share that opinion quite so much, which is not to say I'm like that critical of Woody Allen, I just don't care that much,
right.
But
let me play devil's advocate, because when we were doing Gaspar Noé, and then afterwards, after we'd done the podcast, I went and saw some interviews with him and so on. And one of the things that he thought was just amazing, which left me completely cold, was Ready Player One. He said he thought it was wonderful, and that it was like the film of a young man, and it was so great to see somebody like Spielberg kind of being so excited by and exciting in the medium.
Well, that is quite an interesting point of view. I can see what he means about it being like a young man's film. I mean, that is interesting. Like,
well, that's why I said it.
The thing about Ready Player One for me was I definitely liked it more than you did.
Yes.
You really were quite exhausted by it.
Yeah.
I think, and pretty sick of it. And although I think it had its faults, and we talked about them in the podcast, I watched it again recently, and I was entertained the whole way through. I thought what I was going to do was watch like the car race scene, basically, because I thought that's the bit that I liked, which was right at the start. And actually, I just watched the whole thing, and it involved me. It kept me going, and I saw all the flaws again, but I didn't care a bit.
So I suppose, going back to the question that was asked, were there any films that you have changed your mind on?
It's only been a couple of weeks, but my opinion of The Rider has improved, and
Oh, good.
I was probably a little bit unfair to it at the time. I think some context probably helped in the case of that film. Knowing that they were non-professional actors beforehand might have changed my opinion a little bit. I don't know, but one thing that I didn't really pick up on enough to articulate at the time was the idea that in that film, masculinity isn't about like hiding yourself. Like, I think so often the idea of the kind of Western hero is the strong, silent one. They take things on themselves and they suffer silently if they suffer at all. You know. And in this film, like, you have that scene right towards the start of the film where you've got the four guys sitting around the campfire, and they're all just talking about their various maladies, the various injuries that they've had, the problems that they have. Like, it's a really open conversation about feelings, basically, in this what would otherwise be a macho Western culture of, you know, get in the ring and get kicked by a bull, you know, get thrown from a horse and stamped in the head, and you know, that relationship that he has with his best friend, who suffered the awful injury that left him in a care home and, like, you know, unable to speak. It's incredibly touching, and it's like, if you compare that to Journeyman, where he gets that awful injury, and then his friends leave him because they just can't cope with that. Like, all his male friends just have no idea how to handle that, so they just leave. It's the complete opposite of that, and yet no one's masculinity in The Rider is questioned at all. It's not really a question at all of, like, you know, I mean, I guess it is kind of a question of, like, what makes a man, but then the idea is that a man is someone who cares about everyone and is not afraid to show that, reconfigures that idea really interestingly.
So, are there films that you now feel that we should have seen twice, that we should have done another podcast on? I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, there's films that we covered, because the whole thing is about this podcast is that we see it once and then we talk about it immediately, right? So, you know, there are many films that we have then seen again, but are there some films that you wish we would have done another podcast on that we didn't? I feel we should have done another one on Cold War, and we just weren't able to.
Oh, that's true. We were going to, and then
we couldn't. It wasn't playing.
I can't remember why.
Well, it stopped playing at. It only played at the Electric for about 4 days. Yeah. And we missed it. It will be playing again, I think, at the Mac in November or something like that.
That's Climax.
Oh, that's Climax.
Back.
Okay,
I don't know if Cold War.
Well, that's about. We'll I would like to revisit it.
If it comes back,
yeah,
we'll find it. Or otherwise, once it comes out on home media, we'll
have another look at it.
Because you love it.
Yes, I do.
I always feel that way in a little bit, in a way about Marvel films. As I said before, whenever we talk about a Marvel film, I always end up saying, like, I can't really think about it too much now because it's just so big and loud and all the rest. And then once it's finished, I always come back and go, oh, but this was quite interesting in it.
Yes.
And I always, which was the advantage of when we saw Black Panther, we had each already seen it once.
Yes.
So that was our second screening.
Yes.
And that's why I think that podcast was good.
Yes.
It also helps that Black Panther is a really good film, and much better than other Marvel movies. But still, there is the idea that some movies that reflection, that context, does help.
Yes.
In talking about them.
Well, I think what's good is that if a movie raises, you know, interesting questions, then the idea is that when we go to our second screening, then actually we do get better informed, right? So, you know, I think I mean I like this thing of going to a movie blind, you know, and speaking spontaneously about it immediately afterwards, right? I think it's a different kind of thing if you research it and, you know, read up on it and, you know, and then kind of, in some ways, then that becomes kind of a response to the critics, really, rather than a response to the film, absolutely. Which I think it's fine and it's interesting and it's great, but that might be something to keep in mind going into the future of, you know, the difference between the first and the second screening. So the second screening being not just about seeing the film again in the light of our questions, but actually seeing a film again in the light of our questions and also in the light of criticism.
I think that's right. Although I think our second screening podcasts have been pretty good, but they are always in relation to the fact that we wanted to see them again. It wasn't about like, oh, the critics thought something else, maybe we should reevaluate it. They've been about the fact that we had something else to say.
Yes, and I'd like to keep that actually.
Yeah.
So any thoughts that you've had, or any questions that you've had? It seems I've been asking all the questions.
No. No, man, I'm sound. I just...
Is there anything that you feel that we've done particularly good and that we must keep?
Well, I like the fact that we started introducing ourselves.
Yes.
I'm all about the ego, man.
Okay.
The more often I can say my name, the better. I love to hear it.
I wonder if we also need to think some more about, what criticism orally is. Yeah, so, kind of what's involved in, doing criticism with sound only. Yeah, and are there things that, do we need to find a different language, or is there a better way of kind of conveying our points because we're doing it orally? Do we need to be more conscientious about our speaking? Because I know I'm not, right? I mean, I'm always like, yeah, like, but so I'm not at all conscious. But I wonder if that's something to think about. Like, what is film criticism on the sound waves?
We will often try and talk about the specifics of what a film's doing, which means talking about the image, largely. And so we're trying to do sort of textual analysis on the air, and also like without having our own, sort of visual aids to refer to, because it's a film that's in the cinema that we're just trying to remember.
Yes.
So then we have to try and describe exactly what it is we've seen, and I don't really have a problem. Like I think that's. It's like whenever you want to describe something to your mates that you've seen, you pick on sort of only the important bits. But it's like it's just that we want to talk about reasonably involved things sometimes about the aesthetic. I mean, I think that's great. I think the one thing that we do that you don't see enough of is aesthetic appreciation.
Yes.
And taking in more than just the plot and the actors, which is like most criticism is just, so this is the name of the film, here's the plot, I thought the actors were good. That's what a lot of reviews really like. And the fact that we, like that's not an appreciation of cinema, that's an appreciation of stars and writing.
Yes.
At best. And cinema, like that's the reason. One of the reasons that we like to see films in the cinema is because it's a different aesthetic experience. The aesthetic experience is everything. It's really, really important to us. And so I like the fact that we try and get a grasp of that, even if the fact that we can't use visual aids to help us is arguably a hindrance. But then on the other hand, like you don't want to make it too serious. I think if we started using video to do that, it would become like a lecture. It would become like you've got to make a much bigger point than you want to. Sometimes you just want to make a point more casually or quickly, as opposed to sitting there and saying, now let's analyse this. Like,
I think the thing that I'm beginning to that I'm very proud of, if without kind of getting big-headed, but is that that this is now our 100th, right? That there is now an archive, a Birmingham-based archive, of roughly like 90 films that we've seen in the past year, and in which there's been quite an extended and serious discussion on it, and that it's there and it's available, so that when these films then appear on Netflix or on television, or 4 years from now, if somebody wants to know, what did they think about it, you can go back and look and listen to it again, right? It's there, and so it's kind of like a body of work that we've done in a year.
No, it is my legacy.
Well, there are worse legacies to leave.
I'm proud. What can I say?
No, but so it wasn't. I am proud of it actually,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but I also do think that it's a resource that continues to have an extended life beyond the week that the film is out and that we talk about it. Yeah, that it's still there and people can actually kind of look through the list, yeah, and see if if we've talked about it.
Yeah,
go to it.
absolutely. The other thing is, because I was just looking through the list, and we saw Hereditary twice as well.
Yes.
And that brings up a point about having guests on,
Yes.
which I mean, that's one of our best ones, I think, the second Hereditary podcast, where
Yes.
we spoke to Matt Denny,
Yes.
who's is he teaching?
Well, I think
He's a doctor, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to repeat that. Because I went to university with him, and now he's a doctor.
He's lecturing at the Department of Film and Television Studies at Warwick, and he's got kind of various positions within it.
And I keep referring to him as a horror guru, which I know he likes. So we got him on to talk about Hereditary, which we felt we didn't really have enough of a grasp on. And I thought it was a really informative, interesting, and informed discussion.
Yes, so we should do that again.
Because of his input. And so getting on people who have not necessarily expertise, but expertise is obviously good, but expertise or an interest, something to say. Like, we had my brother on to talk about Phantom Thread, which he was also at university doing film like I did, but that wasn't really the reason he was on. The reason he was on was because he's in love with it, and he was desperate to talk about it and had a lot to say.
Yes.
And again, I think that was really good. Yeah. That was a really good podcast. So that's something I'd be keen to do more of.
Yes. I'm keen to do that as well, and it's also a kind of a way of, reaching out and involving and engaging with, the broader kind of cinephiliac community in the region.
Yeah.
So I think we should do more of that.
Yeah, we should definitely try.
Yes. All right. Shall we wrap up here, because I think it's now pretty much time.
Yeah. Happy anniversary.
Yes, hurrah for us.
Well,
hurrah to us.
100th anniversary.
And thank you all very much for listening. We are now kind of getting, quite a few listeners, and it's kind of very nice to see the stats go up.
Yeah, well, I tell Jose they go up.
Yes, it might not be true.
I'm not the only one with an ego. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Yes. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, Twitter, Facebook, eavesdropping@themovies.com, and YouTube. So you know where to find us.
Yeah.
It's on those that I just said.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.
Okay.